Welcome, bienvenue, welcome once again to another live stream. This is Property Matters Live with Hamish McClay of Surgical Bay, and our special guest this week is Ibrahim Oynay. And we are here talking about a topic which I know very little about. Hamish knows a bit, and Ibrahim knows quite a lot about, which is EPC. There's a delay today, potentially bigger questions tomorrow. Hamish, what are we talking about today?
Well, I'll speak about my limited knowledge because this takes me back. It's got to be back 15 years at least when EPCs were first introduced. I was under the impression that the EPC, which is the Energy Performance Certificate, was introduced by our government. It was as an edict that came out of the EEC, or the EC as it was, a wondrous European community, saying every home should have one. Every home should have an energy performance certificate. And they set up this grand scheme of somebody to come in and inspect it, and very, very complicated things. It was a semi-structural investigation of the property, as well as looking at the performance of it. They screwed it up. Surprise, surprise. Oh, it was the Labour government. Well, there is a surprise, isn't there? However, they messed the whole thing up, but EPCs took off. And then EPCs came, instead of being, it's something we need to do every year, which logically you don't necessarily need to do, it became something you had to do every 10 years, or you should do every 10 years, and it became particularly relevant if you were letting your property out or you come to sell your property. So off I wandered all those years ago. We got an EPC on our property, and so I checked it all out, and we started working with people who were investigating properties and carrying out EPCs. Indeed, I got a lot of work from these people that were producing these energy performance certificates. I didn't have a clue what they were actually doing, what they were investigating. So this was something which in actual fact goes back really about 20 years from when it was first introduced. And it was ideas based on knowledge and energy and goodness knows sort of what else, going back to that particular sort of time. However, what we're actually sort of seeing at the moment, the government again is trying to bring in great demands upon particularly landlords, saying, you've got to get it up to this particular rating. And the trouble is the ratings don't really mean as much as they should mean. And this is one of the great reasons why we've got Ibrahim here, because that's two things. We've never spoken about EPCs before, and Ibrahim hasn't joined us before. So it's a great thing that he's here to help both Gareth and I understand a lot more about EPCs. And if you're going to actually, if you're going to get landlords and people selling their properties to get a new and updated EPC, is it any good any longer compared to what it was when it was set out 20 years ago?
Welcome to the show, Ibrahim. And let me ask you this first question. Are EPCs relevant anymore?
Thank you guys for having me. And hi guys, you guys are welcome to the show. First of all, I would like to say EPC are still as relevant as they were back in the days. I understand that the usage in his item has been static, but EPCs are basically standardized way of trying to ensure that each of these properties has got energy efficiency in terms of how they actually perform. But it is very, very relevant. And if you take a deep dive into it and not just look at the government platform, which is a boring place, basically, you would understand that if you actually have an insight, you actually have an insight on how each properties are actually perform. So EPCs are very, very important, and they are still very useful.
But it's only recently that they've come back into the public light again, right?
Yes, yeah. So sometimes last week there was a a reshuffle of policy, which they're trying to change, are trying to improve on the methodology. So we're using, as an assessor before, we're using what we call the SAP 9, and but now it's not going into SAP 10, which is the fact that they're trying to actually upgrade in terms of the methodology, trying to remove some things which are not very relevant in lines of the methodology as well, and try to see how much, because everything still drives down to performance and drives down to net zero. So, and if you check in terms of energy that is being consumed, the domestic property has close to about 70% of that. So what they're just trying to do is to try and make that aspect of the stock compliant in terms of net zero, and that's where the EPC comes in. So every the domestic property needs to then go to about a band stage. So in the previous policy, the idea was that the landlords or this thing should have a lower band of about band D or band E. But right now, they're actually stepping up to make it a band C, basically. And what the policy has actually done in its real sense is to try and focus on four key aspects. And that's number one, they're trying to see how we can get off gas boilers. So by 2028, yeah. So they're trying to see how we can roll off. Although it is not explicitly stated in the policies saying, okay, gas boilers are going to be rolled off, but it's actually now a new policy that most buildings should at least have an heat pump. So that is stylishly pushing it off the radar. Also, as well, in terms of...
But the alternative to gas boilers is a relatively expensive install, a relatively expensive initial running costs. Where is there the attraction there for the common or garden householder to want to move to what is it, air source heating now?
Yeah, the air source heat pump. So how's it called? The advantage or the intention to actually move is actually behavioral, basically. So I think if you take it from the behavioral perspective and you understand the damage which CO2 is actually causing into the economy or into the environment, then you would know that yes, we actually need to put net zero in place, basically, and try and reduce carbon emission. But outside that, I think the government in their real sense are actually trying to actually produce grant scheme for people who intend to actually get this on board and get this rolling. But I think manufacturers too are trying to understand the fact that, because if you check the difference in between a boiler and a heat pump is majorly in the flow temperature to the radiator. So which means that
I guess the heat pump is more efficient. Is that right?
Yes, it is more efficient. It is more efficient in terms of CO2, but and also in terms of the long-term efficient, in terms of performance, basically. But it is expensive, no doubt about that. And if you're also trying to calculate the rate of return on it as well, it could take years to calculate, because if you're installing,
I did a comparison with my own. Now, here's an interesting one. I'm actually have an oil boiler because I live in the middle of nowhere. So there's a lot of potential support from the government to move from oil to air source heating. But it's still got to be paid from somewhere, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. Yes. Yes. So I think we all pay taxes, and we understand the government are taking a tax. So, and the cost of energy is very expensive now. And after the fact that electrification as well is actually growing in a rapid speed. So there is also a need for us to actually move in terms of the innovation in recent time. But I think the government are actually doing enough to actually cater for those needs, where the grants are being rolled out as effective as possible, so that everybody can actually have an enjoyment to it. But in the long term, Heat pump is the way forward. Basically, heat pump is the way forward.
Okay, so look, Ibrahim, before I pass back to Hamish for a bit, can you tell me a little bit about Ether Energy and how how Ether Energy, which is your organization, can help people?
Okay, so Hitra Energy is a business that is involved in installation of heat pump and gas boilers, and we're also involved in EPCs. But what we've done is to start from the first principles, which is try to understand the energy performance of a house, and that's why we get involved in EPCs before then providing solutions to the customers, because we decided that we are not just going to rush things and saying, so if you invite us to your house to come help you upgrade a boiler, the first thing is to get the EPC done, and the other things is to check if the house is well insulated and ready for every other thing that needs to work. Because insulation of a property is the first condition to get your heating upgraded. Without that, every other thing, installation of heat pump, installation of this thing is going to amount to nothing. So what we are doing is to try and create a situation where we bring back those fragmented parts into a whole scheme and try to explain to people that, okay, this is the performance journey of saying, okay, we've got an EPC platform where we check out your energy efficiency first before going to advise you on whether to install insulation, before going to the heat pump, then every other thing follows as well. And we're also trying to create a digital platform where we can basically show you a more pictorial or a deep insight on what your EPC looks like and what things you can do in bits to actually improve the energy efficiency of your house. So that's what we do at Etra Energy.
Hamish, it seems to me that the whole new focus on EPCs is driven by net zero.
Yes and no, strangely enough.
Oh, good.
I do think, and really, today as we speak, the cost of energy to anybody in the UK is absolutely vast. So if we can improve the efficiency of our energy consumption in any way, it's a great contributor. So Abraham sort of put it so right. If we start off with see what the energy efficiency is of the household, what do we need to do with it? I've got this concern, this thing going bleep, bleep, bleep in the back of my head that's suggesting, well, hang on, we've got a bit of a challenge here. If we get very, very good in the winter time at keeping the heat inside so it costs less,
yes.
What happens in the summer? Are we all to roast?
Yes, yeah. That's a good point.
Now, heat pumps are heat exchangers, if memory serves. I don't know the technical thing about it, but apparently you switch them the other way around and you can turn them into air conditioners. So at least we can have that. But the trouble is then we have them running in the summer as well as the winter. That is just confusing the issue. Let's go back to the important aspects, which Abraham sort of so rightly brought up. It is important that we create as much efficiency as we can with the cost of energy. And if we are going to carry on down our particular route, I'm not so sure that the net zero is going to be the best route outside of what we can actually do in the short term. I think long term, yes. But in the short term, we are not really in the best of positions as things stand at the moment. But Abraham's quite, when he gets invited, when his organization, his company gets invited in to look at the performance of the particular property, that the EPC is that whole sort of key. And really it's about how we can educate people in many respects. How can they get their houses more energy efficient to start off with? And then I think we've also got a little bit of time left too.
Yes.
There might be something as well that comes up which could actually be even better than the heat pumps that we're speaking about. We've still got a few years to actually save it, but I believe there's something going on there as well, because there's too much. I mean, Abraham knows much more about much more about exactly what's going on, but he's got it right. The basis has got to be get the performance of your household right, and then we can look at other things as well. And that's where, of course, a company like his is particularly good, because they are looking at it from an energy perspective. They're not just going around there to inspect it and say, look, it's an A, B, C, D, or E, or whatever it happens to be. They're looking at what the clients can do, as well as what he can do with his company to improve the efficiencies of that particular property. So it's a very important role, actually, particularly for landlords.
Ibrahim, before we go, can you give a couple of things to people watching they can do immediately to improve energy efficiency in their households?
Okay, so the basic thing is this: that I would always advise, which is the same thing I advise if we go to install the radiators. I understand that I think most of the houses in UK like putting out radiators underneath the window. It's not efficient, but still, and some will like putting it behind the curtains. Try to remove the curtains from the radiators so you can actually go. If you have the ability to also do it more or less like a power flush on your radiator or bleed your radiator as often as possible, that's also good. Servicing as well is also very, very important. Servicing is also important. You can't be efficient in terms of servicing those little things. Also, your the TRVs of the radiator, if you understand the physics that works behind it, the one pound saving on it will go a long way to actually save a lot within the
So you're
system.
saying turn down your
Also,
TRDs? Turn them
yes,
down.
yes, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Reduce it by just 1 degrees. Reduction by 1 degree save you a whole lot of money, basically. And quick showers are better than baths, though. I know some people would basically disagree.
My wife likes to spend a good 20 minutes in the shower. I'm in and out in 5. Uh, yeah, so that's
so, so,
um,
so quick showers are better than baths, and you just save, try and conserve all form of energy as much as possible. And you know, it, because of the way the building is structured, the heating, electrical, all energies goes hand in hand. I realized that close to about 20% of our energy efficiency is being lost by standby appliances. I
yeah.
know we all quickly want to turn on the heat and turn them off. You don't need them as at this particular time. Turn it off from the switch. I know the standby is important, but still, it saves you those quids in your in your account basically. And as far as it can go, if you have the power to insulate, insulation is the first principle. Get somebody that can come on board to inspect the property, insulate. If you do that, every other thing would actually fall in line, and you would realize that you will save much more energy and you will be as efficient as more than you actually probably think.
Well, there we are. Look, simple tips, ladies and gentlemen. You can improve the way in which your house works. Uh, Ibrahim, are you aware of any potential alternatives to air source heating that might be in the pipeline?
Uh, I'm not aware of any, and but the only risk, or why I know that a lot of people are trying to avoid the exhaust heat pump, is outside the economic aspect of it. Aside from the, if we divert a little bit from the cost aspect of it, it's majorly in terms of performance. I understand that people believe that what's it called, the the radiator system because it's that efficient, it's far more efficient than the listing in terms of its performance. But I think the manufacturers of these products now are trying to see how they could increase the flow temperature into the radiator. And but outside that, I think uh, on the ground eating, on the floor eating too is a very good one. It is slow to pick up eating. but it is far efficient in terms of heat retention because it moves from a cold region. But since it's starting from the floor surface, is actually rising up, which is very good. So I think if you as a homeowner or a property manager has quite a lot of funds to actually spend, you could mix up your heating mix with the ground floor, as in on the floor heating, while you have a radiator in terms of the boiler for the other ones. At least in this part of thing, you can do things that we call a zoning, where if you don't need the heating at one point, you can use it at the other side. So I think on the floor heating could be something that people should start getting involved with, because it is actually as efficient as the heat pump than people would actually perceive.
Well, wow. I think we've had some excellent information today. Hamish, would you care to take us home?
Well, yes, it's not pretty well done my brain in. We're going to have to need to get everyone to get this one, get me to understand the whole aspect. I think it does point to one thing, and we do speak about this rather often. Speaking to an expert makes a significant difference. It doesn't cost you money, I wouldn't have thought, to pick up a phone and speak to his energy. I don't. The thing is, if you're a landlord, of course, you need to start looking at your EPC anyway to get that up to date. If you're putting your house on sale, it's the sort of thing you can actually sort of phone up and get Ibrahim and one of his sort of colleagues to actually speak to you about, to get that initial consultation. But they're always going to keep their eye on the ball. So if an alternative does come up to the, as we were saying, I have seen things. I haven't looked at the advertisement which says, don't. It might be some government grant or something, but whatever is happening, speak to an expert, and that expert will be able to advise you on what is the most up to date, what's the most forward thinking, and what we need to be doing. Of course, it all goes down to the new house builds. I mean, the big tragedy is we've got so many houses that are centuries old in this country. And wow, to try and bring those up to standard is going to be quite significant.
It's a mission.
But new builds as well, we need to get those the right way around. If we're building them right in the first place, it should be much more readily available to actually ensure that the energy performance is better. But it's such an important topic at the moment that anything you can actually sort of do, not only is going to save you money, because there are simple things that can be done, as Ibrahim has actually pointed out to us.
I spoke to my friend yesterday who lives in a chocolate box cottage, as it were. And I said, oh, it's so beautiful. He said, blooming drafty. And I said, how could you deal with that? How can you? We said, because it's listed, it's almost impossible for me to do anything that isn't going to cost a fortune to sort it. There we go. I thought we'd lost Ibrahim for a second. So it's very hard to retrofit to these things. So you have to go down the secondary double glazing route and all the rest of it. Nightmare. Thank you so much for spending time with us today, Ibrahim. And
Thank you very much.
And to all of you watching, these are difficult times. Energy is at its arguably most expensive. Try and maintain your equilibrium. Try and find people that you can speak to, and also try and look after that mental health. Until next week, goodbye.
Bye.